I need you to hold that thought for just a moment, because what I'm about to tell you will completely change the way you think about what happens inside your brain every single night. There is a biological process running in your skull right now, a self-cleaning mechanism so sophisticated, so elegantly engineered, that neuroscientists spent decades not even knowing it existed. And here's the part that stops most people cold. The primary driver of this system is not a drug. It's not a surgical intervention. It's not a $1,000 supplement protocol that a wellness brand is trying to sell you. It's not anything a pharmaceutical company can patent and charge you $300 a month for. It is sleep. Deep, specific, architecturally precise sleep. And in about 20 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how 3 evidence-backed beverages consumed in the right window before bed can activate this system in a way that most physicians, including many neurologists, are simply not telling their patients about. I'm going to give you the exact studies, the precise biological mechanisms, and the practical protocol that emerges from all of it. But here's the loop I want you to hold open in your mind right now. There is a precise biological mechanism, recently confirmed in living human subjects for the very first time in history, that explains why some people wake up sharp, clear-headed, and cognitively resilient well into their 80s, and why others experience the slow erosion of memory and processing speed that most doctors write off as just aging. I'm going to give you the full mechanism and the exact practical protocol that emerges from it at the end. Don't skip ahead. The context is everything. Because if you don't understand the why, the how won't stick. Let me start where the story actually begins, and that is with a question most people never ask. Where does brain waste go? We understand the liver filters blood. We understand the kidneys filter fluid. We understand the lymphatic system drains cellular debris from every tissue in the body. But for decades, scientists believed the brain was immune to lymphatic drainage, isolated and self-contained behind the blood-brain barrier, seemingly independent of the body's broader waste clearance infrastructure. And that belief led to a massive blind spot in how we understood cognitive aging. Because if the brain doesn't drain its waste, and the brain produces metabolic byproducts continuously as neurons fire throughout every waking hour, then where does all that biological debris accumulate? The answer came in 2012, when researcher Maiken Nedergaard at the University of Rochester published a landmark paper in the journal Science that fundamentally changed the field. Her team discovered what is now called the glymphatic system, a network of channels running alongside the brain's blood vessels, lined by astrocyte cells, through which cerebrospinal fluid flows like a slow, pressurized river. This fluid circulates through the brain's interstitial space, picks up metabolic waste, amyloid beta, tau proteins, cellular debris, and carries it out into the body's broader elimination pathways. The name is a portmanteau, glial cells plus lymphatic. It is, in the most literal sense, the brain's sewer system. Now here is where this gets urgent. Nedergaard's team didn't just discover the glymphatic system, they discovered when it runs. And the answer is almost exclusively during deep, slow-wave sleep, what we call stage 3 non-REM sleep. During this stage, the brain's neurons actually shrink slightly. The interstitial space between cells expands by roughly 60%. That creates the physical room for cerebrospinal fluid to flow more freely, sweeping through the neural architecture and flushing out the day's accumulated biological debris. When you're awake, the brain trades waste clearance for function. The city stays open for business, but the sanitation trucks can't move through the crowded streets. When you enter deep sleep, the streets clear and the trucks run all night. The problem, and this should concern everyone watching, is that the specific sleep stage where glymphatic activity peaks is the stage that declines most aggressively with age. After 60, time spent in slow-wave sleep can drop by as much as 70% compared to your 30s. That means the biological window during which your brain is actively clearing amyloid and tau is dramatically compressed in the very demographic most at risk for Alzheimer's disease. This is not a coincidence. This is mechanistic causality. And in October 2024, researchers at Oregon Health and Science University used live imaging during neurosurgery to directly visualize glymphatic activity in conscious human subjects for the very first time in history. Not in mice, not in computational models, in living human brains. The system is real. The mechanism is confirmed. The question is simply whether you're giving it the conditions to do its job. There are three primary enemies of deep, glymphatic activating sleep in aging adults. The first is melatonin decline. The pineal gland, that small pine cone-shaped structure sitting at the base of the brain, produces melatonin in a rhythm tied to the light-dark cycle, coordinating your entire circadian architecture. Between ages 20 and 70, melatonin production drops by 70 to 80%. Read that again, 70 to 80%. The hormonal conductor of your sleep orchestra is playing at 1/5 of its original volume. Without adequate melatonin signaling, the brain doesn't transition efficiently into deep sleep stages. The architecture becomes shallow and fragmented. The slow-wave windows shrink dramatically, and glymphatic clearance degrades proportionally because there is simply no longer enough time spent in the deep stage where the system operates at full capacity. The second enemy is neuroinflammation, chronic, low-grade inflammatory activity in the brain that disrupts synaptic function, impairs memory consolidation, and directly interferes with glymphatic flow by increasing the brain's metabolic debris burden while simultaneously impairing the clearance channels themselves. The third enemy, and the one almost no one in conventional medicine discusses in this context, is elevated evening cortisol. Cortisol follows a natural arc, high in the morning, steadily declining through the day, reaching its lowest point at night to allow the nervous system to shift into the deep, restorative state necessary for slow-wave sleep. In the majority of adults over 60, this arc is disrupted. Chronic stress keeps cortisol elevated into the evening, and elevated evening cortisol directly suppresses melatonin production. The two hormones are physiological antagonists. When cortisol is still elevated at midnight, melatonin can't do its job. The slow-wave architecture collapses. The glymphatic trucks never get on the road. The cascade is: chronic stress drives elevated evening cortisol. Cortisol suppresses melatonin. Degraded melatonin impairs sleep architecture. Compromised sleep architecture blocks glymphatic clearance, and blocked glymphatic clearance accelerates amyloid accumulation. Every link is mechanistically documented. Every link is addressable. The first drink is tart cherry juice, and precision matters here. We are not talking about cherry-flavored drinks. We are not talking about sweet cherries. We are talking specifically about Montmorency tart cherries, Prunus cerasus, and the juice pressed from them. This variety has a phytochemical profile that is fundamentally different from sweet cherries, and that distinction is not marketing language. It is biochemistry. Montmorency tart cherries contain one of the only measurable dietary sources of melatonin. They also contain tryptophan, the amino acid precursor to serotonin and then melatonin, which means tart cherry juice operates on two parallel pathways, delivering exogenous melatonin directly into circulation while simultaneously feeding the enzymatic machinery that produces endogenous melatonin in the pineal gland. You're not just supplementing a hormone, you're restoring the production system. These cherries are also extraordinarily dense in anthocyanins, the deep red plant pigments that function as anti-inflammatory and antioxidant agents, with documented activity specifically in neural tissue. A controlled clinical trial in adults over 65 with insomnia found that tart cherry juice produced an increase in total sleep time of up to 84 minutes compared to placebo. Sleep efficiency improved from approximately 77 to 84% in the treatment group. Objective measurements, not questionnaires. A 2025 systematic review evaluating 7 interventional trials found consistent improvements in sleep duration, sleep efficiency, and sleep onset latency. The protocol: 8 ounces of pure, unsweetened Montmorency tart cherry juice, approximately 30 to 45 minutes before bed. 2 tablespoons of tart cherry concentrate in water produces a comparable phytochemical dose at a fraction of the cost. If you're monitoring blood glucose, discuss this with your physician first. It does contain natural sugars. But for most people, this is the cleanest, most evidence-supported melatonin restoration strategy that exists outside pharmaceutical intervention. I want to pause here and check in with you, because we're about halfway through, and this is where the information starts getting personal. If you've ever lain in bed exhausted with your mind still running at full speed, if you've ever woken at 2 or 3 in the morning with your thoughts already in motion, that is the cortisol-melatonin antagonism playing out in real time in your own nervous system. It is not a character flaw. It is not simply the reality of getting older. It is a physiological pattern with specific drivers and specific interventions. And if this video is giving you a framework for your brain health that you haven't had before, subscribe right now and hit the bell. This is exactly the kind of content we publish here, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. The second drink is golden milk, and I want to deconstruct the actual pharmacology for you because the science here is far more serious than the wellness influencer branding suggests. Golden milk is a warm beverage combining milk, dairy or plant-based, with turmeric, black pepper, and optionally ginger and cinnamon. The active compound in turmeric is curcumin, which is, as of this writing, one of the most extensively studied natural molecules in neuropharmacology. What makes curcumin scientifically extraordinary is a property most anti-inflammatory compounds don't have. It crosses the blood-brain barrier. That selective biological filter excludes the vast majority of circulating molecules, including most drugs, from reaching neural tissue. Curcumin, due to its lipophilic structure, is among the small minority of natural compounds that pass through and exert direct effects on the brain's own inflammatory environment. Inside the brain, curcumin inhibits NF-kappa B signaling, a master switch of inflammatory gene expression. It suppresses pro-inflammatory cytokines, including interleukin-6 and tumor necrosis factor alpha, both elevated in aging brain tissue and both directly associated with cognitive decline. And it appears to inhibit aggregation and promote clearance of amyloid beta and tau, the exact proteins that accumulate when glymphatic clearance is insufficient. A randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial published in the American Journal of Geriatric Psychiatry found that bioavailable curcumin produced improvements in memory task performance of approximately 28% over 18 months in non-demented adults over 50. The placebo group showed no improvement. PET imaging in a subset of participants revealed measurably reduced amyloid and tau accumulation in the brain regions most associated with Alzheimer's pathology. That is a direct biological readout of reduced Alzheimer's-associated protein burden in living human brains. Now, the single piece of information most people get wrong about golden milk: bioavailability. Curcumin consumed in isolation is poorly absorbed, metabolized rapidly before reaching meaningful systemic concentrations. The research showing significant neuroprotective effects used curcumin combined with piperine, the active compound in black pepper. Piperine inhibits the hepatic and intestinal enzymes responsible for rapid curcumin metabolism, increasing its bioavailability by up to 2,000%. A pinch of freshly ground black pepper in your golden milk is not a flavor choice. It is the pharmacological key that unlocks the entire therapeutic value of the curcumin. Without it, you're drinking a pleasant, warm beverage with minimal neurological impact. With it, you're delivering a clinically meaningful dose of one of the most studied neuroprotective compounds in human medicine. Protocol: warm 1 cup of your preferred milk, add half a teaspoon of turmeric powder, a quarter teaspoon of cinnamon, a pinch of freshly ground black pepper, non-negotiable, and optionally a small amount of grated ginger and raw honey. 30 to 45 minutes before bed. Used consistently, this is a compound nightly investment in the structural integrity of your neural tissue. The third drink targets the root of the entire cascade, the cortisol problem. It is an ashwagandha and chamomile tea combination, and the mechanism by which it works is distinct from both previous drinks in a way that makes it the essential third pillar of this protocol. Without addressing the cortisol problem, the first two drinks are working against a current that keeps pulling the biology back towards shallow, fragmented sleep. Chamomile has been used as a sleep aid across dozens of cultures for centuries. The dismissive response from conventional medicine has been anecdotal, placebo, folk medicine. That dismissal reveals a failure to ask the obvious question: why has every culture independently arrived at this same plant? The answer is apigenin. The primary bioactive flavonoid in chamomile is a partial agonist at the GABA-A benzodiazepine receptor site. It binds to the same receptor family as drugs like diazepam and lorazepam, activates the brain's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter system, reduces neural excitability, and promotes sleep transition. Not as powerfully as pharmaceutical benzodiazepines, but critically without the dependency, rebound insomnia, and respiratory depression risks that make those drugs genuinely dangerous in older adults. Ashwagandha, Withania somnifera, operates on the cortisol axis directly. Its active withanolides have been shown in multiple randomized controlled trials to reduce serum cortisol measurably. A 2019 double-blind placebo-controlled trial found that standardized ashwagandha extract over 60 days produced statistically significant cortisol reduction alongside improvements in all measures of stress and anxiety. A study specifically in adults aged 65 to 80 found improvements in sleep quality, sleep onset, and morning alertness. A 12-week trial in adults with mild cognitive impairment found improvements in both working memory and general memory with KSM-66 ashwagandha extract, the most researched standardized form. When you combine ashwagandha's cortisol-lowering effect with chamomile's direct GABA receptor activation, you are attacking the cortisol-melatonin antagonism from two distinct biological angles simultaneously, removing the hormonal block that prevents melatonin from doing its job. Protocol: steep 1 chamomile tea bag in 8 ounces of hot water for 5 to 7 minutes. Add half a teaspoon of ashwagandha root powder or the contents of one 400 to 600 milligram KSM-66 capsule. Sweeten with raw honey if desired. 30 to 60 minutes before sleep. Now let me close the loop I opened at the beginning. Why do some people maintain remarkable cognitive clarity deep into their 80s, while others experience progressive decline? Part of the answer is genetics, part is decades of lifestyle choices, but a significant part, one modern neuroscience is only now fully characterizing, is whether the glymphatic system is running efficiently every night. And that efficiency depends on three things: adequate melatonin signaling to drive deep, slow-wave sleep, a low neuroinflammatory burden that doesn't obstruct clearance pathways, and an evening cortisol environment that permits the nervous system to actually descend into the restorative stages where the cleaning happens. Tart cherry juice is the melatonin signal. Golden milk is the neuroinflammatory shield. Ashwagandha and chamomile tea is the cortisol switch, the thing that turns off the noise so the other two can work. Used together as a pre-sleep routine, these three drinks create the biological environment your brain needs to do its best work while you rest. Start with one drink based on your primary issue. If you struggle with a racing mind at night and difficulty winding down, start with the ashwagandha chamomile tea. Cortisol regulation is your primary bottleneck. If you fall asleep reasonably well, but wake in the night and can't return to sleep, tart cherry juice addresses the melatonin arc that governs sleep continuity and architecture. If you have a family history of cognitive decline or are experiencing early subjective changes in memory, the subtle things like slower word retrieval, difficulty holding a chain of thought, incorporate golden milk for its curcumin-driven neuroprotection and amyloid modulating properties. Use the 30 to 60 minute pre-sleep window consistently, not immediately at bedtime and not 3 hours before. That window is when these compounds need to be circulating to exert their maximal effect on the biological processes that occur during the first slow-wave cycles of the night. Hydrate through the day. Cerebrospinal fluid is water-based, and mild chronic dehydration, which is nearly universal in older adults, impairs glymphatic circulation independently of everything else. Eliminate screen blue light in that pre-sleep window because artificial blue light directly suppresses the melatonin production that two of these drinks are working to restore. Give any one of these 2 full weeks of genuine consistency. Not one night, not 3 days, 2 weeks. The cortisol modulation from ashwagandha builds over time. The curcumin's neuroprotective effects are cumulative. The melatonin restoration from tart cherry juice shows measurable effects in clinical populations within 2 weeks of consistent use. These are not overnight transformations. They are physiological recalibrations. The brain responds slowly because it is a system optimized for stability. But the direction of that change, given the right inputs over time, is toward greater clarity, deeper sleep, and the glymphatic system running at a meaningful fraction of the efficiency it had when you were younger. Your brain is not passively declining. It is working every single night to repair itself, within whatever architectural constraints your sleep quality allows. What you drink in the hour before you sleep can meaningfully influence whether that window opens wide or barely cracks. That is the mechanism. That is the protocol. That is what the science actually shows. And now you have it. If this gave you something real, hit like and subscribe right now. Your brain will thank you.